The Wind is My Mother by Bearhart. Chapter 2, A Well-Rounded Education. Early in life, my parents began to teach me what the word respect really means in practice. A first great lesson was respecting other people's rights and property. In fact, it was almost an unwritten law for all children to have that respect, especially for elders. If an elder came to the house, we immediately offered him a chair. Even though we might have been short on food, the first thing we did was prepare a meal for him. If we had nothing to eat, we'd at least offer him water. Maybe he was carrying a walking stick or hung his hat on the chair. The children were never to put on that floppy hat, make a horse out of that stick, or play around as kids usually do. If that stick and hat belonged to the old man, we didn't touch them, didn't even think about them. In that way, they told us to respect a man's belongings. My parents told me when someone is talking, whether they're old people or not, children are not to butt in. You wait until they get through and then you can speak. If you see an old man coming along the pathway and there's room for only one person, stand aside and let him go by. Don't make the old one go around you. If you see him sitting out on a hot day, don't ask, "Grandpa, are you thirsty?" Just go ahead and get him some water, saying, "Here, Grandpa, have some water." He's going to thank you, and chances are he's going to bless you. But don't do it for that. Do it out of respect for your elders. When you have respect for the elders, it extends to everything else, including all of nature and its life forms. The old people used to teach by telling stories. That's how we learned our legends. When elders came to visit, it almost always meant that unless they lived nearby, they'd spend the night and go on the next day. At bedtime, the family made a pallet for the children in the same room with the elders, and it was done for a reason. Understanding human nature. They knew that children liked to eavesdrop, knowing we were listening when we were supposed to have been asleep. The grown-ups told one another the legends of our tribe. They already knew the stories. They were telling them for our benefit. If we'd thought about it, it should have seemed odd for the old people to be telling stories to one another. If they'd said to us, "I want you to listen to this story," we'd probably get bored, maybe forget about it. So in a way, they were great psychologists, because the thing that you're interested in most, you're going to remember. There was no television then, and those stories, told mostly in the wintertime, were our entertainment. The stories also held lessons as to what was appropriate and inappropriate behavior among our people, so the children were getting an education at the same time. I learned a lot of things when I was supposed to have been sleeping. One was a story of how the mourning dove came to be. A little boy asked his grandfather, "Why does that dove have a sad song?" His grandfather told him it was something that happened a long time ago. A little dove's father and mother were killed by some humans, so he was raised by his grandmother, who loved him very much. As the dove got a little bigger, he started playing with other birds out in the forest, and he'd stay out late. His grandmother said, "I wish you wouldn't do that. It worries me for you to stay out late. Something might happen to you." The dove said, "All right, I won't stay out late." But then he met some other birds who played a game called gambling. I don't know what kind of gambling they did, but they played for acorns, walnuts, and hickory nuts, and he'd go from one place to another to gamble. Once he got a whole lot of walnuts. He didn't come back for several days. One day a messenger found the little dove and said, "Your grandmother is very ill. You should come back." "Okay," he said, "after this game." But after that game, he played another game because he was winning. 2 days passed and another messenger came. "Your grandmother is very ill. We don't know whether she'll make it through the night." "All right," he said, but he couldn't stop. And still another day went on until all of a sudden he lost everything he had. He thought he had a lot of friends, but they had all left, and he found himself alone. Then he began to think of his grandmother. He remembered how she loved him and took care of him, how she was always there for him when he was sick. "Now I've let my grandmother down. I'll go straight home." By the time he got there, his grandmother had died. So he told the people, "From this day on, my song will be a sad song and a mourning for my grandmother." And that was the beginning of the mourning dove's song. As much as we learned from our parents, Native American children received most of their education from their elders. The boys received their training from either an uncle or grandfather, and the girls received theirs from an aunt or grandmother to learn the woman's ways. My uncle, Jonas Bear, told me that a long time ago humans were able to talk to animals. We were that friendly with them. They could understand us and we understood them. But at some point, humans got into such a tight spot we had to take the life of certain animals for food, and then we started getting sick. It turned out that various animals, even fish, were angry at us because we were eating them. So we started getting illnesses such as deer sickness and fish sickness. A council of our people got together with those four-legged creatures of the waters and those that fly in the air. We gave them offerings and told them, "My relatives, we have great need for you in order to live. When we hunt, we'll try to kill you quickly so that you will not suffer. In time, our bodies will lie down inside this Mother Earth, and something will grow there so that our animal relatives can sustain their own lives. A cycle will be formed, an exchange for the continuation of all life. In this way, we ask how to make our people well from the sickness you cause." So the animals told us how to cure the illnesses and allowed us to hunt them because they knew that we were not killing them for sport. Our need was to feed hungry people, and we used every part of the animal for our survival. As long as we kept our word, no sickness came. That was the origin of how our people began to have knowledge of curing different illnesses, and that's why our children were taught, when they went out to hunt, never kill out of anger, nor for sport to see how many animals you can kill. Take just enough for survival, and always be respectful of the four-leggeds. If you must kill, present an offering and talk to the animal, explaining, "I need you for my family." Children were not allowed to hunt until they become skilled with their weapons. We were taught the anatomical structure of each animal and exactly where to hit so it would die quickly and not suffer more than it had to. When we brought back the kill, even that was a ceremony. We gave an offering to the animal, honoring it and explaining why we took its life. Young boys were taught never to eat their first kill. They were to give it to an elder. If you just killed and ate it yourself, that's about all you'd be able to do. You would not become a great hunter because you weren't showing much respect for the animal that you killed. But if you killed and made a sacrifice, giving the meat to others, then the motive for taking that life was based on generosity and respect. Those were the traits of a good hunter. I was about 8 when I killed my first squirrel. I used something similar to a slingshot and got pretty good with it. Before I shot the squirrel, I said, "My little brother, I'm going to take your life. I have an old aunt who has come to visit, and she's not feeling too well. She's blind and can't do anything for herself at home. I understand that our four-legged relatives have medicine that can make humans feel better, and I want this for my aunt. In time, when my body ceases to live and is put down into the ground, from it something will grow that your people might eat and keep on living." That was the understanding between your people and mine. I will not let you suffer a long time, but I need you and the meat that you carry with you. I'm doing it out of love. I killed that squirrel with my first shot. Before picking it up, I placed my hand over its head and made a circular motion, saying, "Mato," thank you. The circular motion made with the hand symbolizes the circle of life. Humans being fed by animals, then animals feeding on the plant life after humans have been returned to the earth. A never-ending exchange. Then I pulled the fur from the forelegs and buried it at the base of the tree where I'd found it to ensure that many more squirrels would be born to take the place of the one that I killed. As I headed for home, I carried that squirrel carefully. Once we pick up the kill, we try not to let it fall to the ground until we get back to our home, because dragging it on the ground showed disrespect. The animal, even if involuntarily, gave itself to us. It was a gift. I have a cousin who cooked for us, and knowing that I wasn't supposed to eat my first kill when I got home, I gave a squirrel to her to cook for my aunt. I went back outside and stooped over a wash basin, washing my hands, when all of a sudden, whack! My cousin whacked me with that squirrel right on my rear end. I had forgotten all about it, but knew immediately what it meant. They did that with your first kill to make you a better hunter. She hit me on behalf of the squirrel, and if the squirrel itself was tagging me for killing him. Now we were even. I killed it, but it hit me. It was a way of balancing everything out so I wouldn't feel guilty about taking its life. Learning how to think. We didn't learn only about hunting and legends. Children got a very well-rounded education from our elders. One elder sat down 3 of us boys who had just reached puberty and asked a theoretical question. Suppose you were married and your wife and child were about to drown in the river. Which one would you save? The boy answered, "I'd save my wife." Why? The elder wanted him to give a reason right then and there. The child is innocent, and in its innocence, it can go on. My wife and I could always have another child. Then the elder turned to another. "What about you? Which one would you save?" "I'd save the child." Why? My wife and I would already have had our life together, and the child needs a chance to live its life. "What about you?" I answered, "I love my child in a very special way. In another special way, I love my wife. We might all drown together, but I'd try to save both." None of these answers was right or wrong. What this elder was doing was teaching us how to think, set priority, and give reasons why. Jonas Bear once took me down to a pond and told me to look in it, asking, "What do you see?" "I see my reflection." "Put the stick in the water and stir up your reflection." After I stirred it up, he asked, "Now what do you see?" "My face is all distorted." "Do you like what you see?" "I know that it's not supposed to be that way." When you meet someone and you immediately dislike them, always remember you are seeing a reflection of yourself. There is something you don't like about yourself, that you're not owning up to. When you see it in someone else, then you don't like that person. But in reality, you're being displeased with yourself. Always remember that. He was not a psychology teacher. He'd never even heard the word psychology. Along with that teaching, he said, some children are born deformed, perhaps without arms or legs or disfigured on their face somehow. Maybe one side of the eye is totally missing, all covered up with flesh. It's our teaching, and we're very strict about it, to never stare at someone who has a deformity. Just look to one side and try not to keep looking at them. The reason is that whatever caused the deformity is going to think you like it so much that maybe it will cause your child to be born that way. Accept the child. They may look different, but they've got a heart just like you have. They have feelings just like you have. Play with them. Make them laugh if you can. When a child was born deformed, our people said it was especially blessed. It would attract the attention of good people and create a lot of love, not just sympathy, but love, so that it could grow into a useful life in spite of that deformity. So everyone seemed to pitch in and support the family as well as the child. That was part of our real strict teachings about not staring. There were also many practical things I was taught in our way. When we're walking along a distance or up a hill, we were told to imagine a rope-like cord coming out of our abdominal area. Picture the other end of the cord wrapped around a tree or rock ahead of you and let it pull you like that, a wrench pulling a car out of the mud. Then walk with your fingers kind of curved as you swing along that cord is pulling you. After you reach a tree or rock, visualize wrapping the cord around some other object up ahead. After long walks, you'll be walking at a steady pace, not too fast and not too slow. And you won't be huffing and puffing. You'll feel light and you can go a long distance that way. My heart is made glad. I'm one of two clans. My dad was of the Bear clan and my mother was of the Wind clan. So the bear is my father and the wind is my mother. My father told me the story of how our clans had their beginnings. A very thick fog settled over our people in the southern part of the continent for many, many days. The fog was so thick it was hard to see even a hand in front of your face, and our people didn't know what to do. They began to come together in groups. Even the animals came and stood by our people. It lasted for several days, and then a strong wind came from the east and blew the fog away. Then the fog cleared. When the fog cleared, one group had a bear with them, and another had a deer, and some had an alligator. So each group became the Bear clan, Deer clan, Alligator clan, Bird clan, and so on. The easternmost group had no birds or animals with them, but that's the direction the wind came from, so they became known as the Wind clan. One thing that used to really bug me was the fact that in our tribe we had a tiger clan. I asked my elders, where in the world did we come across tigers so that we could have a tiger clan? But I could never get a good answer, even from my elders. They just pointed toward the northwest and said, we came from this direction. As far as we can determine, the Muskogee migrated from the area known as Siberia and traveled across the Bering Strait. Our elders said, we crossed the backbone of the universe, the Rocky Mountains, and continued to walk in a southeasterly direction until we came to the ocean. And there, the old medicine people began to dive into the water. What they did down there, I don't know. But when they came up, they said, we'll lead the people inland and settle near the waterways, because the medicine that we'll use grows there. So they led the way inland to where Georgia and Alabama are now, and that's where we settled. I have read that there are tigers in Siberia. If our people came from there, then that's where they got the tiger clan, so I feel better about it now. The Wind Clan are the orators of our tribe. They have beautiful, poetic ways of describing even a small thing, weaving pictures with their words. For example, they would never say, "I'm glad I came." That's no big deal. Instead, they would say, "Today my heart is made glad I came." I recall an old man talking about himself at a gathering. He said he was the chief in one of our villages, and people came for a big dance that night in our ceremonial grounds. His speaker, interpreter, sat on the left of the old man, told him how to voice what he had in his heart. The speaker stood up and said, "This is what I've been instructed to relay to you people. Our chief sits here, thinking back on the many gatherings like this held in times past. At that time, he had elders he could talk with and things were good. But one by one, they all left, and today he's cloaked in the coat of loneliness. But by you coming, he has opened that coat, and his arms reach out to each one of you with gratitude, because you make things lively again around here. It puts joy in his heart to hear laughter, to hear voices, to hear little children playing. This is why these ceremonies were set forth, so that we could thrive and help one another make a future for our children. Today he says, my heart is full because you helped to fill in those empty spaces." That's the kind of speeches they made.